You're listening to Upon Further Review on the Raiders Podcast Network. Here's your host, Eddie Paskal.
Raider Nation, what is going on? Eddie Paskal and the Remote Boys back again, still sheltering in place, still cranking. Audio tent. I'm here in Henderson, Nevada. The great producer Trav down in San Jose, and our very own KMM, who will join us at some point in the program, I believe has left his compound. He has not confirmed or denied his whereabouts, but a little birdie told me that he has left his compound. So we'll have to see what he's up to this week. But we got a good show this week. We've kind of caught our collective breath after the 2020 NFL draft, and what a draft it was. What a good but very tiring 3 days it was for us. And I mean, really, I can't imagine if I was as tired as I was in the end, how Double M and Grewdog were feeling at the end of the virtual draft there. But we've collected our breath. We're feeling good. We're energized, ready to rock, ready to continue our life of isolation. But there's no one I would rather spend it with than Trav, KMM, and all of you lovely people. And we do have a good show this week, man. We're calling in the big guns. We have, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, we're going to welcome in just a few minutes Nick Saban. Yes, that Nick Saban, the head coach of the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, to talk all things Henry Ruggs, Josh Jacobs, and the whole bit. And this is a conversation we had with Coach a few days ago. I'm sure you guys have seen the video on Raiders.com, but if you listen to the pod, you get the full audio experience. So there's going to be some stuff in this interview that didn't make it on .com. So make sure you stick around for that. And then after that, well, we pride ourselves on being a pod for the people. So we had to go to the people this week. And Trav and I had this brainchild a few weeks ago of kind of hosting a fan roundtable. And essentially that's what we did. We had some technical glitches along the way. It wasn't perfect, but there's something there. And we're going to keep doing these. We're going to keep figuring out a way to make them better and to be able to include more of you guys. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. So after Saban, we're going to welcome in 4 fans that we chose, and we got a little help from our ticketing friends for some folks as well. And we're just going to talk it out, man. We're going to talk about everything that's happened the past couple months, the state of the silver and black, and how we are all hanging in there throughout this madness. But before we get to all that, you know where we got to start. We do it almost every week. It's time for transactions. And this, Travis, when we get to getting some money for this podcast, we should sell the transactions segment, because we do it every week. It's at the top of the show. I'm no sponsorship guru, but if I were a money man, I would think that this is an easy one to sell. But here we go. Let us begin. The Silver and Black have waived running back Mark Thompson, a true Raiders legend, re-signed DeMornay Pearsonell for the 4th time, I believe. I was trying to do my math before we came on the air. Either the 4th or 5th time the notorious DPE has joined us. So welcome home, brother. And that's it. But I will say there was another, not transaction for us, but a transaction for the Dallas Cowboys that affected us. Daryl Worley has officially signed with the boys. So his tenure in silver and black ends. Daryl, you were an honorable soldier. You served with grace and pride. And as we say for 99% of the guys that leave us, we will continue to root for him, except the week that he plays the silver and black. Now, before we get into our conversation with Nick Saban, just one kind of bit of housekeeping information. The Raiders started their virtual offseason program on Monday. A lot of teams, as you saw, started their program on 4/20. The Raiders elected to start theirs the week after. And so this isn't technically phase 1 of the offseason program, as producer Trav so eloquently and patiently told me. This is kind of the pre-phase, if you will. Phase 1 tentatively scheduled to begin, if possible. And obviously we say all this with a huge asterisk next to everything, because, well, the news changes every day. And really feels like it changes by the hour sometimes. But phase 1 tentatively scheduled to begin on May 18th. If facilities are open and all that good stuff comes to fruition. But, we're just going to have to play it by ear. But the Silver and Black did begin their virtual offseason program earlier this week. And that consists primarily of meetings and classroom time. Obviously, guys not getting out there on the field together or any of that, because, hey, just like all of us, they are sheltering in place. another man who is sheltering in place, and another man who I don't even know if he's got a lot of time on his hands because Nick Saban is a madman. But earlier this week, Coach Saban was good enough to give us a few minutes of his time to talk, as I said, all things Henry Ruggs, Josh Jacobs. The video, as I kind of mentioned earlier, also on Raiders.com right now. But for those of you loyal pod listeners, sit back, buckle up, and get ready for the dulcet tones of Nick Saban and his full interview with Raiders.com. So here it is, guys, our chat with Nick Saban. And we are joined by the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, Nick Saban. And Coach, we appreciate your time so immensely. And I'll just ask this at the top. What are the silver and black getting in Henry Ruggs III as the player?
Well, I think first of all, you're getting a great person. You're getting a guy that has great competitive character, really hard worker, and very, very explosive, talented guy. He's got great hands. He's got great speed. He's a great special teams player, which is unusual sometimes for guys that play receiver, that he's a gunner. He can cover kickoffs. He's got a lot of mental and physical toughness about him relative to the position. So I think he's definitely what you would categorize as a speed receiver, a guy that can really get on top of people, a guy that's great, running straight line routes, but he drops his weight and gets out of breaks, pretty good too. So, but I think what you're getting is a really good person, a hard worker, somebody that is going to be a great teammate, that's going to get along well with all the people that he plays with.
I'm glad you brought up his personality. I'm going to ask you about that in just a second. But we've heard so much about that speed that Henry has. It's kind of been his calling card throughout this draft process. But what aspect of his game are we not talking enough about? What aspects of his game is he, I don't want to say underrated, but are people not fully appreciative of at this point?
Well, I think it's probably just mental and physical toughness. I mentioned that earlier, but and he's really a totally unselfish player, which can be a little bit unusual too, at the wide receiver position. Never complains about not getting the ball, glad to do whatever you ask him to do, whether he's got to go block somebody on a running play or an RPO or whatever it is. So I think the thing that people aren't talking about is the competitive character and toughness that the guy has.
You talk about that competitive nature, and to talk about our 19th pick, general manager Mike Mayock said that one thing he loved about Damon Arnett was his competitive streak and how competitive he was at practice during games, really from play to play throughout the first quarter to the fourth. And you've seen so many guys come through your program, so many guys that have had incredible success at the next level too. How important is it to have that competitive streak? How important is it to be a guy who doesn't want to get beat and is going to do whatever it takes to make sure that you come out on top?
Well, I think, there's a lot of guys that have talent and ability, but they never really ever bring it to fruition if they don't have great competitive character, perseverance, ability to overcome adversity, and pride in performance. And I think that's what separates, guys as to really reaching their full potential and being outstanding players relative to somebody else that you look at and say, oh, that guy's got talent, but never seems to quite add up. Because I think the mental aspects of who you are and what you do is what drives you to challenge yourself to be the best that you can be. And I think Henry Ruggs has got that.
All rookies have room to improve. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, even guys that go 12th overall like Henry. But do you see him as a guy that can step in day one in John Gruden's offense and really contribute in a meaningful way to this Las Vegas Raiders team?
Well, that's for Coach Gruden to decide, but, it's kind of a hypothetical question. But I think Henry is a guy that will go out there day one and give it everything he's got. He's a smart guy. He can learn things. He doesn't have issues when it comes to that. I don't think receiver is the most complicated position to learn, and I think he'll do everything he can to master his craft. And the way I always look at it is play a guy when he can go out there and create value for himself. How fast the Raiders organization can, get to that point with Henry. I have confidence in guys like John Gruden can do that very well, and Henry certainly has the ability to do it. So I don't know why it wouldn't happen.
You know, Henry's going to have a friendly face when he touches down in Las Vegas for the first time. Another member of the Tide, Josh Jacobs, coming off an incredible rookie season for the Silver and Black. What's it going to mean for Henry to have that friendly face and Josh, to have a guy that he knows and is very comfortable with and can talk about football and not football, and is really going to, you know, if everything goes to plan, really help this transition for Henry getting to the next level?
Well, I think that it's, you know, always helps if you have a comfort zone, you know, in terms of the social aspects and the people around you, and somebody that's going to introduce you to other people and know other people, and kind of give you the lay of the land a little bit. You know, it's just a part of being a human being. I think that we all like to be comfortable, not necessarily as competitors and football players, but I'm saying just in our life. And I think anytime you have somebody that you know and is a good friend and you have a lot of respect for, which, you know, I know Henry respects Josh and the kind of competitor he is, that's going to be helpful.
You know, and Josh is obviously going to be very excited. Not only does he have his old buddy back, but we've talked to a lot of people over the past 12, 24 hours about what a guy that has speed like Henry can do for the running game, because all of a sudden now a defensive coordinator has to account for a guy with his speed. So having Henry out wide, what do you think that will do or has the ability to do for the Silver and Black's ground attack in 2020?
Well, I think, you know, having balance on offense is always really important. And I know that's something that, you know, the Raiders probably believe in, and how John's trying to build his program. And, you know, all the great running backs we had here, we always had a great receiver that sort of went with them. You know, when Julio Jones was here, Mark Ingram was a tailback. And, you know, you can go through the years and just try to map that out, and it always works that way. And I think they complement one another, because if you really want to stop the run, you know, you want to put an extra guy in the box all the time. So you got to play single high coverage, which leaves one-on-one coverage outside. If you want to stop outside people, you want to play more split safety type coverages, which now you don't have an extra guy in the box, so it's easier to run the ball. So, you know, I think having guys like that complement one another is probably the beginning of really developing a very effective offense.
You know, Coach, you talked a little bit at the top about how valuable Henry can be on special teams. And I know that especially with the Raiders, John Gruden and assistant head coach Rich Bisaccia, that is something that is important to them, from your first rounder to guys that come in as undrafted free agents. How rare is it to have a guy that has Henry's pedigree, that is as fast as he is, like you said, as competitive as he is, but is also incredibly willing to do that dirty work sometimes on special teams as well?
Well, he's always had a disposition to do it. I think, again, it goes back to that competitive spirit, competitive toughness that he has. I mean, here he was our best gunner when we were punting the ball. And you're always looking for guys with great straight line speed to do that. They can beat the ball down the field. He actually played on the kickoff cover team, which is pretty unusual. And a lot of times he was a safety, but sometimes we would make him hot, and he was the first guy down there and made a lot of plays, you know, doing that. He also was a kickoff return guy for us, and, you know, did a good job of that. So he's got a lot of versatility on teams. But I think this is something that teams have to look at, you know, in this day and age. I mean, you know, if your wide receivers, your DBs, your running backs, your tight ends are not all guys that, you know, can play on teams, you're not going to have very good special teams because the offensive line, defensive line, quarterbacks, you know, maybe your star players at certain positions aren't going to be on teams. So you don't have enough guys on your roster for the game to be able to have quality players on special teams. So I think it's a huge asset to have a guy that has that kind of diversity as a player.
You know, Coach Saban, we appreciate your time so much, and I'll get you out of here on this. We'll have a little bit of fun. Henry made quite an impact last night when they went to his live shot at his house wearing the robe. What did you think of his look for one of the biggest moments of his life, rocking the robe? He looked good. He looked comfortable. He looked like a guy who was ready to take that next step, I thought.
Look, you know, we pride ourselves here in, you know, guys trying to create value for themselves by the brand that they develop. And I think Henry's got a great brand, and I was kind of interested to see the look. You know, it was different, and he looked good.
And I think he'll look a lot better in silver and black come game day. Well, Coach Saban, we thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, so we thank you so sincerely for carving out a few minutes for us.
All right, thanks. Good luck.
and a very generous, or genuine, I should say, thank you to Coach Saban. And Travis, before we get into the fan roundtable, could we just share our story of perhaps the saddest roll tide in the history of man?
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
So after we wrap with Coach, it's kind of awkward, right? You're on Zoom, you're looking at each other, but no one's really saying anything, and we kind of did the pleasantries of all that. And he was kind of a grumpy bear, and at the end, I go, he's about to get up, and I just go, "Hey, roll tide, Coach." And Saban just kind of hangs his head and delivered, as I said, what was the saddest roll tide. It was just Travis. It was more like roll tide.
Yeah, he wasn't even looking. He was just like kind of looking down, and as he was getting up,
Like you could tell his heart wasn't in it. He was tired. He was probably upset that there was no practice that day. He was missing out on valuable recruiting time talking to us, and he was just despondent.
that would be a good memory though.
It
Down
will
the
be a
road.
good memory, and hopefully Coach is a little happier. Hopefully some light has been brought into his life over the past couple days. But one thing that brought life into my life this week, Travis, and usually it's hanging out with you guys, aside from last week when you decided to really humiliate me on the air and crack a cold one for Roger Goodell. But 9 times out of 10, I do enjoy these sessions. And this week, I was filled with an extra bit of enthusiasm and spirit and optimism for the days and weeks ahead because we've hosted, Travi, our first fan roundtable. And as I said at the top, this is far from a finished product. We're kind of workshopping, and that's one thing that's been really great and refreshing about our shelter in place time is that we're getting to try all these things that we've talked about for a long time and just really haven't had the time to try to execute. And this fan roundtable is one of those little plans. So, as I said, we got 4 fans in the mix, and we decided we were going to talk all things Raiders. We were going to talk about the draft. We were going to talk about free agency, kind of their thoughts on where this team was headed in 2020, where they currently were as of yesterday. And it was a lot of fun. As I said, it was far from perfect. They're going to get better, but we have something here. So, with all that said, enjoy it. Our first of hopefully many fan roundtables with the Upon Further Review crew. Man, and we are just so excited to unveil this new kind of project that we've been working on for a while, and we are going to get it to happen. Our first fan roundtable on Upon Further Review. We're still working on a name. Maybe we'll come up with one by the end of this, but I could not be more excited to welcome in Ernie Collins, John Goodwin, Stephen Moulton, and Pat. Pat, I don't even know what your last name is, Pat.
Wong.
Pat Wong, what a legend, a Raiders legend. So, gentlemen, I brought the 4 of you in here because you all love the Raiders. You all love football. You're all locked into what this team's doing. Probably now more than ever since we got nowhere to go. We got no one to see. We're just talking ball. So we're going to start here. The logical place to start. The NFL draft just wrapped up. And Ern, let me ask you first. I'm going to start with you, big fella. Of all the draft picks that we secured over the weekend, which is the one that really tickles your fancy the most?
Well, it's hard not to get excited about Ruggs. I mean, we really been hurting for some explosive playmakers on the outside and on the receiver part of things, and it's going to be really exciting to see what Gruden and Mayock can put together scheme-wise for that amount of speed, and hopefully it produces some great results for us.
John and Pat, what about you guys? What did you guys like during the 2020 draft?
Love the speed of Ruggs. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think at first I was enamored by Ruggs for sure for all the right reasons, but like as I watched the draft go on and I watched the other teams in the AFC West load up on weapons and receivers, that Damon pick, the number 2 pick at corner, kind of for me got better and better as the draft went on, just to see, if you're going to be facing Mahomes for the next 10 years in the division, like that secondary is going to have to beef up. So, at first, Ruggs for all the right reasons. But, I'm stoked that number 2 corner pick for sure.
Yeah, Damon Arnett, hopefully a piece of this puzzle for a long time. And Steven, before I get your thoughts on which of the players that you like the best, you, out of all of us, had a very different draft experience over the weekend. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that, and then tell me the same question as these guys. Which of the picks did you enjoy the most?
Well, as far as the draft experience, obviously this is kind of like one of those history-making events, and hopefully it doesn't happen again because of this coronavirus situation. But you know what? Being on national TV and being viewed by 8 million people, that was a beautiful thing. And I want to thank Courtney, my service coordinator, for hooking that up. I mean, it was like being at the draft. Last year I was there for the draft picks in Vegas, and I thought that was a great event. But, you know, this whole virtual situation and having to see Roger Goodell on there and practicing with him, that was great. And then when it went live, to see Guy Fieri in the lower right-hand corner was good too. I thought that was just great. I didn't know there was going to be anybody from television or the network going to be on there at all, but that was great. So from that aspect and having to sit through it was a long sit, but I enjoyed every bit of it. As far as the actual players, I have to agree with the folks. Ruggs was definitely we need the speed. It's going to open it up for Waller. It's going to open it up for Jacobs. And we need somebody out there to break that up, and that way it makes the defenses on the other teams have to kind of worry about, we got a deep threat now. And Carr's going to have to be on his game to be able to make that work.
So, yeah, 100%. And I think the Ruggs pick it's definitely the sexiest of the picks, right? I mean, the guy runs a 4-0 40. You know, he's got great hands. We were talking to Saban earlier this week, and he said, you know, everyone talks about the speed, but he's like the ultimate team guy. Like, he'll block in the run game, he'll contribute on special teams, and he's really everything you want out of a number one pick. But John and Pat, headed into day two and day three of the draft, at least for us, like, we felt going into night one, we needed a receiver and we needed some help as you know, on the defensive side of things in the secondary, and both of those needs were filled. What did you guys think headed into day two? Were there any glaring needs that you wanted addressed?
I mean, I feel like I spent a lot of Sundays watching the ball go way downfield when the Raiders were on defense. So, you know, one aspect of that is draft guys in the secondary, right? But I think it was kind of cool to see Gruden say, and Mayock say, you know what, like, we're in sort of a Big 12 division. Like, there's going to be a lot of high scoring. So the fact that he doubled down and loaded up on some more receivers was cool. It was kind of I thought it was, you know, it was courageous, might I say.
Yes. And Ern, like, speaking of those weapons, you look at what they did on day two, Lynn Bowden, Brian Edwards. I don't know if heading into day two, we were like, oh, we're going to pick another receiver or whatever. But I mean, for a team that at times really throughout last year had not an easy time moving the ball, but they moved the ball by and large pretty well for large parts of the year. To add those weapons, and like John said, where we're in a division where you got to score points. How did you feel about those two guys on day two?
Yeah, very excited about it. Bowden's guy, it looks like he does pretty much everything on offense. So between him, Ruggs, and Edwards, big physical guy, it's really exciting to see what Gruden is going to be able to do and let his creative imagination go wild and put together some things to get defenses uncomfortable.
You know, Steven, I'm curious. Have you ever seen someone or heard someone, and I'm not going to tee Ernie up for this because I know what he's going to say, but have you ever heard anyone call themselves a special teams war daddy, Steven? Have you, brother?
I mean, everybody's got their own nicknames, you know, everything from the assassin to whatever, but war daddy, that's a new one.
Ernie, I feel like you're our very own special teams war daddy, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Do it all. Offensive special teams, right? If we're scoring points or kicking off, I'm your guy.
And you're in the Bass jersey right now, are you not? You're in the.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm in the Janikowski jersey. It just seemed appropriate, and we were talking about it before. I'm not sure if I'm ready to make the Ruggs adjustment, but I'm going to do my best. If Seabass gave the blessing, then I'll give mine as well.
Dude, that is kind of weird because I saw your tweet the other day where you said you're at kind of this crossroads of fandom where Seabass is clearly your favorite player, but now, like, at what point do you have to not close the book, but get ready to embrace a new man in number 11?
Yeah, you know, it's a hard point, but I think looking at just kind of our franchise as a whole, it's not something that they really do. You look at Charles Woodson lately or last year with, Abram, and just kind of a handing of the torch thing. It's not a disrespect thing. It's just kind of next man up.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, we've talked a little bit about the draft, but if we can go back just a few weeks, and it seems like forever ago, back to free agency, we've talked so much the past couple weeks in particular that it seems like there was a plan for Mike Mayock and John Gruden this year. It seems like there was a calculated plan of how they wanted to attack building the roster, reinforcing the roster. And Steven, those free agency moves, I think, kind of reinforced that kind of that thesis and what they're wanting to do. You look at guys like Corey Littleton, Jason Witten, Carl Nassib. I mean, they address areas of need for this team. So I'll just ask you about Jason Witten, since he's the one that came into mind first. How do you feel about adding a future Hall of Famer to what is arguably the deepest position group on this team?
That's a good point that Witten came on for the leadership and the experience that he brings. And I think helping these young players is going to go a long way. And Witten's always been on my fantasy team, so I'm a good guy for that. But I think he'll bring a different level to the playing status of each of the new guys as well as the old guys. Because, again, that experience speaks for itself. Being a future Hall of Famer, it doesn't get any better than that. And he still has some gas in him. It's going to make Waller better. It's obviously Ruggs and all these guys are going to bring a different dimension. But I think his leadership on the field definitely speaks for itself. And I think Gruden did a good deal bringing him on.
Now, Pat, do you think – I mean, we look at what Darren Waller did last year, and I'm sure he made a lot of you guys very happy in fantasy. But, Pat, does Waller get even better in 2020?
I think he gets even better. I think last year was his first year in the system, and this year, with a year under his belt with Gruden, I think he's only going to get better and better. And even with Witten by his side, that's just going to keep improving him.
You know what's crazy to think about, too, about Waller is that this is a dude who's still, like, learning how to play tight end, which is incredible. Like, you could make an argument, and I don't know – I'm sure people would be split depending on where you live geographically, but there's an argument to say that Waller was the best tight end in the league last year. And this is a dude who hasn't been playing tight end for more than 24 months. Like, we've had card leases that are longer than how long Waller's been playing tight end. So I'm excited to see what he does physically, how he gets even better. Like Pat said, how much more comfortable he is in Gruden's system. But on top of all that, to add a future Hall of Famer that's going to be in his ear every single day in all those meetings, that seems to be invaluable. What do you got, Steven?
I was going to say also having Witten on the team, they can run the 2 tight end offense.
Which is Gruden. Gruden loves that. Gruden's been very open about how much he loves that.
That's going to open it for everybody. So Carr can share that around.
Yeah. Big John, what do you got?
Well, I'm wondering what you guys think. You cover the team and you're around it every day. Like, do you think that Gruden and Mayock brought in Witten to maybe play a year, 2 years? Like, do you think they want him on the coaching staff at some point? I know he may go back to media because he tried that out and, it was what it was. But do you think he goes back to media? Do you think that Gruden ultimately, hopes to keep him on the staff somehow?
Man, I think in a perfect world, probably. Think about it this way. If Jason Witten or whatever Hall of Famer of choice you want says, hey, Coach X, can I be on the staff? You got to be insane to be like, nah, man, we're good. We're chilling. If Charles Woodson calls up tomorrow and says, hey, guys, hey, Gunth, can I come and coach? There's no way that Gunther's going to say no, right? I think it really depends on what Witten wants, though, kind of what he wants his next chapter to be. And I hate using the term coach on the field, right? But really, if all goes to plan, that's what Witten's going to be, right? Where he's going to be that guy for Waller. He's going to be that guy for Foster Moreau. He's going to be that guy for the room. He'll be able to contribute too, because let's face it, the man's a baller still. It's not just because he went away for a year and, he did all that. His skills haven't diminished. In fact, his legs are probably a little bit fresher now that they had that little jaunt up in the booth. But I don't know, man. That's a really good question. And I don't know, Ern, do you think that you would want, if you were a player, right, and you're putting putting the bow on this incredible, spectacular career, one of the best careers at the position in NFL history, do you think you would be drawn to being a coach, or do you kind of want to take that time and back up a little bit?
I think it's dependent on each individual person. I don't know if you can generalize it like that. Witten did such a I guess it's debatable how good of a job he did, but he's successful at being a booth producer because I've seen everything on Twitter, right? He's able to do that, and it seemed like he was comfortable. So there's obviously a drive inside him that wants to get back on the field, playing. As far as coaching, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I'm not, able to say, but there's certainly a football fire that wasn't lit in the booth that he needs to reignite back out on the field. So we're happy to have him, and hope his leadership is going to be good for all those young guys and for Waller, and keep everybody focused in Vegas. I'm sure it's going to be an easy place to get distracted.
Yeah. Guys, I'm curious, and I know we're kind of running up against it, so we'll wrap it up in just a few minutes. But I'm curious from each of you, and I'll start with you, Steven. In terms of headed into this offseason, have all the questions that you needed answers to been filled in terms of how this roster is built out, what people's roles are going to look like in 2020? Do you feel better about those answers now?
I think this draft really proved, I guess, really what Gruden was trying to do. The thing that I was concerned about, and again, because the Raiders were not healthy this past season, they had a lot of injuries, and now we're coming back from everybody recuperating along with these new additions. I think they have been answered. Proof is going to be in the pudding, obviously, when they get to mini camp and everything else. But I think they had some missing pieces that needed to be filled, especially in the receiver ranks. And I think he's done that. I think they did a good job in picking players that are going to add to what they already have currently on the roster. Yeah. So I think they're headed in the right direction and the questions have been answered.
Yeah, I agree with you for the most part there. John and Pat, what do you guys think? Do you have any big, huge questions that you have headed now into, I guess, mini camp and training camp or whatever, whenever that starts?
I think my biggest question going into mini camp is how the Mariota signing is going to affect the quarterback position. What's Carr's role going to be? What's Mariota going to do? How's that competition going to work? And what the end result's going to mean for the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think really at this point it's all about competition, right? Where I know it's such an old Tyra sports cliche, but you know, when you bring a guy in to compete with, it's going to bring the best out of everyone. I don't care if you're a quarterback, you're a wide receiver, you're a punter or a lineman. If you bring in someone that's going to push you day in and day out, I think that's just going to be a net positive for everyone else. So yeah, like you said, man, we're going to see how it shakes out once we start playing football again for real. But I'm excited, man. Like you said, it's going to infuse a lot of new energy into that quarterback room. So Ern, what about you? Big questions that you had, call them January 1. Are most of those answered at the time being, or do you still got some stuff on your bucket list?
Yeah, well, a lot of the questions did get answered just by the moves that they made in free agency and the draft. I personally thought they were going to take a younger quarterback and just kind of see how things develop, and it really showed the confidence that Gruden and Mayock have in Derek and Mariota and what they have in that quarterback room, as well as at the cornerback spot. They really didn't, like, for example, they drafted three wide receivers and only one corner, safety as well, but it shows where their confidences are and where the areas that they thought they needed to improve. And I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think we're all very excited. We're all excited to get back to football, meaningful football, whenever that may be. Like, the virtual offseason is great, and I'm glad that we're able to do it, but there's no substitute for the real thing. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I'm hoping, Producer Trav, that we didn't ruin this so we can do this again, because it is not like we do like to get in the mix with fans and hear how you guys think, because really we're making stuff for you guys. We want you guys to be engaged with what we're doing. And hopefully, like I said, this goes well and you can keep doing it. So, gentlemen, John, Pat, Ernie, Steven, thank you guys so much.
Raider Nation, baby.
Raider Nation.
Raiders.
Oh, Steve, let's go, baby.
Thanks, guys. And that was a lot of fun, man. And as I said, we're going to get better. We're going to try to do more of these. We're going to try to clean up all the technical glitches and just make it a more seamless experience for everyone. But for a maiden voyage, man, I don't know if we could have done any better. And a sincere, genuine thank you to the 4 gentlemen who made some time for us on a busy, Wednesday afternoon. So we finish up the program as we always do. It's victory formation. And Travis, I have to ask, it's been some time. Have we acquired any type of sponsorship money for this segment?
As of today, no.
As of today, we got $0 coming in. So that's just exciting stuff. It's Eddie Paskal, Producer Trav, and we welcome back our favorite guy, our senior esports correspondent, our junior draft analyst, and our resident expert on all things Southern California, I should say, the great Kyle Cannon Booby Cartwright Martin. KMM, how you feeling today, brother?
Alive.
Well, I guess that's better than the alternative.
Yeah, I'm happy that I woke up with a smile on my face and plenty of rest under, I'm ready to go.
How much sleep do you get these days?
Like 6.5 hours.
How do you operate like that? I don't know how you do that. I need the full 8, baby.
I mean, they say you only need 6.
That's Trav. How much do you sleep?
It varies anywhere between 8 and 6.
Well, I guess when you go to bed at 8:30, like me, you have a little more time to rest and get geared up for the day ahead. But gentlemen, we've come to the point where we've let the draft marinate. It's been a little less than a week since it feels like we wrapped up on Sunday at some point, whenever we did. But it's been some time. We've had a time to kind of think about how these pieces are going to add into the team, how they're going to affect the guys that are currently on the roster. And granted, as Kyle brought up earlier, we're still kind of unclear about what the UDFA crop is going to look like. And as you know, I will give nothing but love and respect to all of the UDFAs. But KMM, have you, in your analysis of things since we wrapped up last week, have any of your thoughts changed? Or are you still pretty consistent in what you felt like a week ago?
Yeah, same, man. I mean, there's nothing that I've discovered over the past 7 days that would cause me to think otherwise. I'm very content with what Mayock and Gruden accomplished, and I'm excited to see who some of these UDFAs are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it seems like every year, regardless of circumstance, one or two of these guys that we signed as UDFAs end up making the team. I mean, look at last year, we got Alec Ingold, AJ Cole, Andre James. Am I missing any, Kyle? Those are the three that come to mind immediately.
Yeah, Alec Ingold is the big one for sure. Andre James is kind of a versatile offensive lineman, does it all.
Don't you dare disrespect AJ Cole like that.
No, he's a great punter. I mean, he supplanted Johnny Moonshot, which I guess wasn't too hard. I
There it
suppose,
is.
but
I knew you had something lined up. I knew you had something in the chamber.
yeah, AJ Cole, great guy, big fan of his.
The only thing that I've really thought about this week, because I'm kind of in your boat, Kyle, where I've thought a lot about, because obviously I have nothing but time on my hands, how these guys are going to impact the 53, how they're going to impact not only 2020 but 2021 and beyond, and kind of the nucleus and the core of this team. And I'm with you where my thoughts haven't really changed that much. I felt good coming out of Saturday night. I still feel good. I still have some questions, not a ton, but just I do have a few things that I'd like to see addressed in the coming months. But the one thing that I've really thought about is I don't know. And Travis, this might be a better question for you since you're a resident Raiders historian. I don't remember a year where we entered the season with as many weapons on offense as we are in 2020. Like, does any Raiders team of yesteryear come to mind?
I mean, the most recent would probably be 2002.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Jerry Wright, Tim Brown, Charlie Garner. You had all those guys. So it was a stacked offense then.
I mean, the one that just comes to mind for me, and obviously my Raiders fandom is not as mature as yours, but 2016, and 2016, that was your first year, right, KMM?
It was. Seems like a lifetime ago.
God, do you remember when you first got here? We went 12-4. Brother, you thought the world must have been your oyster.
Yeah, man, I thought it was all peaches and candy. I couldn't believe it.
But in 2016, I mean, you look at that team. It was Coop, it was Crab, Latavius Murray. Who was our tight end that year, Travis? I'm drawing a blank.
In 2016, our tight end
That was
was
pre-Jared Cook.
Lee Smith and Michael Rivera.
The great Michelle Rivera.
And Clive Walford.
And Clive, that's right. So yeah, I guess you're right, Trav. 2002 is a much deeper crop of players. You got two Hall of Famers, Chuck Garner. Who's the tight end on those teams?
Doug Jolly.
The great Douglas Jolly, of course, a true legend. But I mean, think about what we're gonna head into come the fall. Hank Ruggs, Tyrell, Brian Edwards, Darren Waller, Jalen, Josh. Am I missing anyone? Oh, what's it? Lynn Bowden. I mean, boy, we are just, and I even then I feel like I'm missing two. I mean, we have 13 wide receivers on the roster. Oh, Jason Witten, future Hall of Famer. I mean, like, it's crazy to think that you name off all these guys of where Darius can be able to go with the ball, and you're still like, oh no, I forgot him. Oh, and I forgot him too. Oh, we have a great offensive line that's coming back and is gonna be healthy in another year in the system. Like, dude, I want tutties in 2020. Like, 2020 has got to be the year of tutties. It absolutely has to be.
I mean, there's going to be plenty of people for Derek to throw the ball to and score touchdowns, and there's going to be plenty of blocking for Josh to run for touchdowns. And then even Lynn Bowden, Jalen Richard. I'm curious how they'll get in the mix. I want to see some two-back sets. Just get them incorporated into the passing game. That's all I want. That's all I want.
I know that you love. I know, Kyle, that there are a few things that you love more than seeing a running back catch the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah, it gets me going, man. It's the way the game has changed. It's the way that you have to go nowadays. You can't just go with the running strictly back, the running exclusive guy. He's got to be able to do it all. That was Derrick Henry's biggest knock, but I mean, obviously he still gets it done just running, but nobody's built like him.
Yeah, I mean, Derrick Henry is also averaging like 17 yards a carry because he's built like the mountain from Game of Thrones and is just throwing people and crushing skulls along the way. But I'm with you. And one thing, KMM, that I'm glad you kind of teased this into is I'm kind of curious in terms of like what that third down back situation is going to look like, right? Because Mayock has said Jalen's one of the best third down backs in the NFL. He can do it all. That he can block. He's versatile out of the backfield. He can catch. Like Lynn Bowden is now in the mix, but you don't want to take Josh off the field too much. Like I'm kind of curious to see how that role kind of matures and evolves as the season goes on.
Let me do a little quick research. Josh had a lot of carries last season, but that's what they wanted him to be.
How did you feel about the number of his carries? Like in a perfect world, would you like Josh to have less carries than that or more? When you pull up the number,
I'd like him to have he had 242 rushes, maybe like
missing 3 games.
Missing 3 games. I would realistically like him to be in the 215 carries range.
Okay.
And stay healthy. I think him staying healthy is more important than anything. And I think he'd be able to do that. I mean, Josh proved that even with an injury, he can ball out. So,
I mean, Josh is a tough SOB. I think that's one thing that became abundantly clear. I mean, we could say it now. It's not a secret. Josh was far from 100% for a lot of that season last year, and he still produced at an unreal level. But I'm with you, man, where it's like if his touches can go down a little bit, we can kind of supplement those with Lynn Bowden and Jalen. Like I'm with you, man. I think that's a net positive across the board.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting timeshare between Jalen and Lynn. There's no doubt about that. I mean, they're going to both have to contribute in different ways, and that's what they both do best. They're both versatile guys. So, to your point about touchdowns, a variety of options. The Raiders are going to have no excuse for being creative with what they have.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the mad scientist John Gruden scheming up plays, man, it's gonna be a lot of fun to see how that kind of transpires, and as I said, how the offense kind of evolves and matures once we get to training camp, or we have some sort of meaningful football. But there's some news that came out this morning that was kind of expected news, and I'm not going to get a tally for this one, Kyle. Don't worry. Andy Dalton has been freed. He's been liberated. Now, these experts on the Twitter are saying he's going to end up in New England. Do you buy that?
I could see that for sure, without a doubt in my mind. He'll probably take less money than Cam Newton will demand, which is the reason why Cam isn't signed yet. Also, that probably Cam just doesn't want to go through the offseason BS. Cam just wants to show up and go.
Well, shoot, at this point, that's what we might all be doing.
Yeah, honestly. But yeah, New England's the only team right now that doesn't have either a young quarterback that's still trying to have their potential tapped or an established veteran. I mean, New England's the only team where they could turn. Andy Dalton's not a bad quarterback by any means. Like he's average for sure. I think any team without a quarterback would be more than happy to have Andy Dalton. I think the Bears would be happy to have Andy Dalton, but they can't because they're stuck with Trubisky. They still have to make sure that they try and develop his talent, which is a waste of time. But yeah, Andy Dalton to New England, that seems like a safe bet.
Are you not a Stidham guy, KMM?
No, not at all. Nothing against the guy. I hope he's has a successful career, but I don't know. I don't know. Has he started any games?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, if you're New England, if you're Belichick, you want someone who knows how to run an offense. Not that Andy Dalton is the Peyton Manning of play calling and audibles, but he knows how to play the game and he can sling it.
Trevor Maya, you think Andy Dalton ends up with Belichick and the evil empire continues?
Yeah, I truly do.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I buy it as much as you guys. I mean, I could see it, and it for sure, like Kyle, it makes complete sense that he ends up there. But I don't know, man. I feel like Belichick is always like 4 steps ahead of everyone else, and like signing Dalton just seems like what you or I would do. You know what I mean? But it's gonna be interesting to see how it shakes out. Kyle, would you crack a cold one with Andy Dalton?
Yeah, why not? Seems like a chill guy.
Yeah, I probably would. I don't know if he'd be on the. I don't know if it'd be like if it would be like a dream. You know, like oh man.
A beer with Andy Dalton.
Oh, gee willikers, my dreams have come true. The snow is
it'd be
falling.
Cool. I'd be fine with it. There's other people I'd rather not get a beer with. Andy Dalton's not on that list. He's whatever.
Who's number one on your not get a beer list? I'm curious.
Oh man, that's tough. I could go so many different directions.
You are a man of enemies.
Just in the NFL.
Or your life, I don't care. Whatever.
The one guy I wouldn't get a beer with, Booger McFarland.
Oh, that's a good one. You do have a long-standing vendetta against Booger.
Yeah, that I have no desire to get a beer with Booger.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Boy, this beer, Kyle, it tastes hoppy, and they make it hoppy because of the hops. Thanks, Booger.
And then he'd show off his fingers for some reason. Like, all right, dude, we get it, man. Your fingers are jacked up. I think oh man, you couldn't pay me enough money to get a beer with Tom Rinaldi. And
the angel of death.
The angel of death himself. And I'm sure Rinaldi's a nice man. Like, I'm sure he's obviously an incredibly talented dude, and you know, the stories that he does are incredibly heartwarming. But what are you going to talk to Rinaldi about? Like, hey, Tom, why don't you tell me about that 17th feature you did on that kid that died? Or, hey, why don't you tell me about that story where the entire family was lost in a terrible natural disaster? Like, I don't want to do that. Like, what are you going to talk to him about?
It'd be a very sad gathering.
Exactly. Like, I'm not going to awake, brother. I'm trying to crack a cold one. Oh, Rinaldi. You think Rinaldi would ever come on this podcast if we invited him?
Not after that.
But I went out of my way to say it was not a shot at him. I said he's a very talented man. He's good at his job. I'm sure he's a nice man. He just does everything that, when I think of Tom Rinaldi, I think of sadness and I think of death.
Hey, if you want to bring him on and kill the vibe of the Upon Further Review energy, be my guest, man.
Trav, who's a guy you're not drinking with? Or girl?
Hopefully this redeems me, but I'm going to say Raj Goodell.
See, I take umbrage with that, Travis. You literally cracked a cold one for this man a week ago. You gave him credit, and now you're
doesn't
like,
mean
I would never
with
drink
him, though, you know? Here, cheers. There you go, you know? But I'm not going to go sit in his man cave and drink it with him, you know? While he falls asleep on his chair.
Dude, Goodell looked like a corpse over the weekend. Like, I've thought about that a little bit more, too, over the past week. Could we not get my man, like, some icy hot or something for his back? Like, he was just melting into his lazy boy. Like, he looked physically impaired.
And that's a much more comfortable environment than being on a stage, you know? Like, come on.
What if it was on the stage, Trav, and Goodell just, like, couldn't do it? Like, he couldn't muscle it up? What would they have done? Like, if you're a producer and Goodell says, I can't stand, what do you do?
Well, you have that number 2 guy just come out and do it. You know?
But do you make an announcement like the commissioner's back is acting up, or, you know, I don't know.
Maybe not on the broadcast, but
in terms of some good news, though, and it feels like we've gotten, I don't want to say a lot of good news, obviously, because there's a ton of people that are still in really tough positions and are going through it. Unfortunately, a lot more than us. But KMM, as our resident baseball guy, I don't want to say you're the big baseball guy. We know whose title that belongs to, but we saw on the Twitter this week couple days ago that there is a plan, a tentative plan, and the term that I saw was, quote, cautiously optimistic is how they described the plan of baseball being able to come back, sans fans, of course, in late June and July. They would have 3 divisions broken down geographically. So you'd have a West, a Central, and an East. What do you think, man? I know we've talked about it before where baseball has to get it right because they're the first ones that are going to go and people are going to look to them to see how they do it and how it works and what doesn't work. But I don't know, man. I would be super fired up. Not only for the return of sports, because obviously that's what we're all waiting for, but I think the weird divisions would be fun for a year.
I would forfeit the entire baseball season just to have the NBA playoffs. That's all I want. That's all I want. I know you're asking me a question about baseball, but I just want to see. I want to see the Lakers in the postseason for the first time in 7 years. We just can't get it. We can't get it.
Well, let me ask you this though. But if the baseball thing is relatively successful, right? Quote unquote, as successful can be in these times, don't you think it would spur the NBA to kind of look into finishing out the season or starting the playoffs or whatever?
I saw something that the NBA is considering playing all of its games at the Walt Disney facility in Orlando, which would be interesting. I mean, there's plenty of hotels down there where they could house the players, but I just don't know if anyone wants to do that. Like this whole MLB thing where players would play in Arizona, Florida, and I don't know what the central state would be.
Well,
But
the MLB plan that I saw, the most recent one, is that they would travel and it would be like a normal, like they would play in home stadiums, but they would only travel to, so like if you're the Dodgers, right, you would only play the Padres, the Giants, the Angels, probably the Mariners. I'm trying to think of what other West Coast teams, the Rockies, stuff like that, to limit the travel.
yeah, no, I just don't know because they'd have to be stationed. It's not like they're going to go home to their families, right?
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
And I know Clayton Kershaw, he came out with a statement and said, like, look, I'm not leaving my family. Like, I'm not going to go play baseball for 6 months and not see my family. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that lifestyle would work for many of the players, just living the bachelor life. But I think you'd be, I don't know, I think there'd be a lot of players who just wouldn't be interested in doing that. I think they'd rather wait and just forego a season. I don't know, man. I mean, the whole contract negotiations make things weird too. Like Mookie Betts, Dodgers traded for Mookie Betts this offseason, and he's going to be in a 1-year deal with Dodgers for the time being. And I'm sure they would like to re-sign him. But what happens if they don't play? And then does his contract just roll over to the next year? Or do you just trade for a guy to not ever see him play and he could potentially sign another deal? Like, how does that work?
And Mookie would technically not even be a Dodgers legend because he wouldn't have played a single game, right?
He'd be like Antonio Brown, except without all the drama and foolishness.
Yeah. I wonder though, like, I think the Kershaw example is a good one because it's good. And it's like Kershaw is at the top of, when you're talking about pitchers, like Kershaw is probably he's a top 5, top 10 guy, right? He's making a ton of money and he's probably in a different position than your last man on the roster who's scraping by. So I wonder, and scraping by is a relative term. I'll throw that out there too. But I wonder if like they did this geographic thing and the Kershaws and those kind of guys don't play. But do you think I feel like a majority of the guys would play though? You know what I mean? Maybe just without sans the guys who are making $500 million.
Yeah, I think there'd be plenty of people who would still play and you'd be able to get by. But I don't know. It just would feel like a half-assed product. Like, is that something you really want to put out there if you're the MLB? I mean, you have a lack of fans right now as it is. And maybe playing without fans would be a good thing because they do it half the time anyway. The regular season is so long.
Don't you think, though, that the American public, like, I'm just thinking of like the three of us, would you rather have half-assed baseball or nothing?
Oh, I'd rather, yeah, I mean, take what I can get at this point. Like, I'm over here trying to find cricket leagues or like anything I can watch, Australian football, whatever. I don't care. I need something though. And it's not the same. Like, yeah, all these ESPN classics that they've been putting on, very cool to watch, but it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Like, I
I'm
need
with you, man.
live sports.
I know. I'm with you. I'm with you there in a big way. But is our close personal friend Dana White? He's getting the Fight Island rocking and rolling in a couple weeks, is he not?
He's not. That is no
Oh,
longer
he's not?
happening. Yeah, it is no longer happening. I was very, very upset to find out this news.
So the fights that were going to be on like May 9th or whatever, those are out?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
that is upsetting news to hear, KMM. I genuinely did not know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's that was going to be our only hope, but not anymore.
Thanks, Dana. I'm sure it's not his
Thanks,
fault, though.
Rona.
Yeah, I was going to say, Dana seems like the kind of gentleman who wants to put on a fight by any means. So, just another week. No sports, no ball, no nothing. But we do have some good news this week. And Travis, I believe we legally can't say too much about it, correct? All we can say is that we have big news coming.
Big news in the works.
Big pod news. Big upon further review news coming next week. So the next time that you guys hear from us, so after today's episode, the next time that we hit the airwaves, whenever that may be, we are going to unveil some big news. And I know we joke about this a lot, but it's like actual big news, like something that is actually like pretty dope and a lot of people worked on and is actually like a net positive for all parties involved. So make sure that you join us next week at a time to be determined because we are going to unveil some big pod news. And I think we're just going to leave it at that. That seems like a good way to get out of here. So for Eddie Paskal, producer Trav, the great KMM, engineer Jim, Nick Saban, and the 4 fans who joined us on the roundtable today, we thank you deeply, humbly, and sincerely for joining us. And as I said, make sure you come back next week because we got something to tell ya. I can't tell you right now, but you're going to like it. So that's it. And we will see you guys next week for a brand new Upon Further Review.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Upon Further Review on the Raiders Podcast Network.